Hey guys, welcome back to Real Estate Today. We've got some awesome topics. I am one of your hosts, Jeff Beggins, here with my brother
I'm Craig Beggins.
and our brother from another mother,
Mike Puma.
Mike Puma. And clearly it's Blue Shirt Day, and we are all excited to bring you this visual extravaganza and sharing what's going on. Those of you who may be new to us, what we are is a bunch of real estate guys, right? But know what we're talking about. This is our 32nd year with our real estate brokerage. We've done over 60,000 transactions. We've got several hundred salespeople. We've got agents all across the state of Florida, and we know what we're talking about. We've been through ups and downs and lefts and rights, and you name it, all across the board. So this is about us explaining to you, from our perspective, through experience, about what's really going on in the market, what we see happening, challenges, issues that we have going on. So 2 topics today we're going to hit. Number one is it's very exciting because for me, it's on, right? The game is coming back. The party is coming back. It's not here yet, right? But we've got some very positive economic movement that's happening that I believe is going to have a profound impact on this and on our industry and on the economy as a whole. So we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to talk specifically about the industry itself and salespeople inside of this industry today. And because it's a dumpster fire in many, many ways. There's way too many people get into this business that shouldn't have. And the facts are it's a real job. It's a real business. And most people don't treat it that way. So we're seeing a mass exodus of people, which is phenomenal. And we're seeing some really good ones that are remaining crush it. So we're going to talk about kind of the ins and outs and intricacies of that. So, gentlemen, let's start talking about the market. The market really is consumer confidence, and the market is driven by consumer confidence. It is, and that's driven by thoughts, ideas, the Fed, the rates. What are you seeing? What are you feeling? And where are we going? Craig, let's start with you.
Well, I think one of the things we just talked about earlier is job security. If you are afraid of losing your job or having a demotion in your pay, you're not going to feel comfortable and you're not going to buy a house, right? What's fascinating to me is what the professional marketers do to adjust to market conditions. And when I talk about professional marketers in this example, I talk about home builders. And in the area that I'm in South Hillsborough County, where there's a tremendous amount of new home construction growth. And it is killing the market in one way, but it's making the builders thrive. So what they've done is said, hey, we're building new houses. Let's talk about new houses for that. What do you get? You get a new roof. You get new appliances. You get top of the line plumbing. You get everything new. And who appreciates that? The homeowner, number one. The insurance company, number two, because you get lower insurance premiums, right? And then the builders typically own their own mortgage companies. And what they're doing is they're pre-buying cash, and then they're offering it at a discounted rate. So even though the mortgage rate is 7 3/8, you could buy a new home with a 5.99% mortgage, which makes a substantial difference in your monthly payment, right? Plus, they're giving you cash for closing costs, which is a great idea. So when you look at the market now, this particular market, what I'm seeing is we sold a house. Let's say it's a 3,000 square foot house by Jones Builders last year for $580. Now the market has continued to appreciate. Okay, let's be clear on this. The market has continued to appreciate. It hasn't appreciated as fast as it was, but it's continued to appreciate. So the Joneses decided to sell their new construction Jones home. They bought it for $580. Now it's worth $700. And the builder's selling the same house for $700. But guess what he's done? He's bought down the interest rate and he's paying their closing costs. So is the builder really selling for $700? There's $40,000 of incentive, so he's really selling for $660. But the Jones buyers who bought 2 years ago, their house is 2 years older, the roof is 2 years older, their AC is 2 years older. The insurance is going to start to be impacted, and they're now pricing up at $700 where the builder is, but the builder is really at $660. So we're seeing the resale homes sit on the market because the agents aren't strong enough to tell the truth about what the competition is. And I got one more comment on that. And the builders are smart enough to drive their own construction. The other thing I'm finding is, we are from where we are. Jeff, if you want to be in Madeira Beach, you're going to be in Madeira Beach. because you're from Madeira Beach and you know that's the area you want to be in. But I'm coming from Nebraska. And right, and if I get with a Madeira Beach agent and I tell them I want to be in Madeira Beach, they're going to try to sell me Madeira Beach. But I could easily persuade it to go to Treasure Island or North Reddington Beach. It's only a half a mile away, and I can get a similar house. So the buyer's demands are not as narrow focus as they used to be because they have so many options. Right? One more comment on that is their options are limited because you go talk to these builders now, there's 3 stages of homes. There's move-in ready, which have big incentives. There's early move-in, which is 3 to 4 months out. And then there's start your lot, which means you get to pick some of your stuff, and there's no incentives on that. So that just the whole market just needs to be explained in a whole new way.
Well, it's
Well, I mean,
interesting. Go
it's
ahead,
all
Mike.
competition based, though, right?
Yes.
I mean, the reality is whether it's a home up the street or whether it's a new construction, it's still competition.
Yes.
And so you still have to compete. You still have to make sure that whatever your product is, how does it map to those? What's better, what's worse, and price it accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
So it's still going to matter. And the more options that a home buyer has, the more competitive things are.
Yeah.
Right? That's just the reality of it. But I do think that from an economy perspective, we're in a really interesting spot because you have a lot of folks that are still very confident because while you do have layoffs, right? I mean, there are people right now going through that, and I'm sorry for all of those people, but the reality is there's not as many people going through that as there are people that are still very confident. And I think the work from home movement that happened has a lot to do with that because you have a lot of people that, even if they live in the area that they used to work, they're saving on gas because they don't have to drive as much. They're not eating out as much because they're working from their house. Like these ancillary costs have gone down. So even though they may not get the big Christmas bonus, even though their company may not be doing quite as well as maybe it was a year ago, they're still super confident and their cost of living has stayed lower than what it was. Their expenses have gone down. So all of this fuels confidence, right? So now and then you have the other side of work from home, which is I was living in New York City and I was making great money, but now I don't need to live in New York City to keep that same job. So now I can move to Tampa, buy a nicer, bigger place for less money than what it was costing me to rent in New York City. And now I'm in a much better spot as well. So those things have really started to play out. And because of that, I think you're going to see, especially as these rates continue to come down, that's going to open the floodgates in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, I can see exactly what you're saying when I look at my neighborhood and see the cars people are driving. Right? That's a huge change because cars have gotten damn expensive. Mm-hmm. And there's some nice cars driving around these streets in Tampa now that weren't here 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's probably that New Yorker who's got the extra bump that doesn't need that anymore. He's got less of housing costs and he can have a different lifestyle, which leads to confidence. So I think that's where we're at.
Let's talk about the confidence for a second and simply a couple things about that. Number one, I think a lot of the layoffs are convenience-based layoffs too, from a company standpoint. I think there's a lot of companies that are streamlining because they should, right? It's not a necessity. It's about, wait a second, why do we have all these locations? Why do we have these people? I can get this thing done outsourced a lot cheaper. And I think you're starting to see a lot of consolidations because here's what we need to remember. This situation that we're in from an economic position of high inflation and high rates is 100% man-made by the government, right? 100%. It's not, there's no fundamental problems in the economy. The stock market's strong. The crypto markets are strong. The commodities markets are strong. Employment numbers are strong, right?
Even Bitcoin's going up.
Everything's
Have
fine.
you noticed that?
Right. But intentionally, they wanted to put the brakes on because things were going too fast, too well. So they put the brakes on. So that those brakes is man-made, temporary. And that's the difference. A lot of people say, oh, no, here we come. We're going back into 05, 06, right? All those times. We're not, because that wasn't man-made. That was stupidity made by poor business decisions that crushed the entire sector of the economy. And the response was people saying, oh, shit, and slashing things and going out of business and wiping out because of poor choices, right? This is fundamentally man-made temporary response to a pandemic, right? And it's going away. So the point of this one is we hit the peak of interest rates about a couple months ago, right? We tapped the 8 button, right? And that was like, oh shit, this is not good. Psychologically, that was like a brick wall, right? So now we're 1% below that peak, that right now. Now they're not low yet, right? But they're a hell of a lot better than 1% higher than they are right now. And we haven't had the floodgate, as Mike was talking about, open yet, because why not? And here's what we're talking about: everything's supply and demand.
Supply and demand.
The builders are doing their things because they want to. They're publicly traded companies and have to hit earnings marks or they're screwed, right? Or the stock price tanks and the bonuses are done and the end of the year is coming. So you got to look at the big picture, the huge picture on this one. They got to move product whatever they need to do. And they don't want to cripple their price point because they know this is a temporary solution that's going to pick back up in the spring as well. So they want to preserve price points. So they don't care what kind of concessions. It doesn't matter if they're profitable or not, right? To some point, they got to keep the earnings. They got to keep the machine moving. They got to keep the purchases happening, the slabs going, the guys, the roofs building, and just got to show that to the analyst phone call, right? So they're just playing the game until the market turns back around. But the poor Bob and Mary buyer and Bob and Mary seller, not publicly traded Blackstone companies, they're the ones that are sitting there right now saying, what in the hell's going on, right?
Yeah, how come the builder's getting 700 and mine's only worth 650?
Right. And
because yours was worth 580 2 years ago and now it's worth 660. That's a pretty damn good inflation.
Because there's not a lot of buyers right now and they're sitting on the market for 60, 70, 80, 90 days, right? Saying, what's wrong with us? How is Lennar popping out 14 sales a month and I'm still sitting here and I've dropped my price down, I've got concessions? It's because there's no buyers, right? There's fewer buyers than there were because the lateral moves are gone, right? The lateral moves of, hey, honey, wouldn't it be nice if, let's go do that. Nicer pool.
Rather than renovate our kitchen, let's just buy a new house.
Buy a new house. It's about the same amount of money, about the same payments. Let's get closer to school. Let's get closer to work. Let's get closer to the water. That's over. Temporarily paused, I should say. It's paused. That market's gone. That was a big chunk of the market, probably 20% of the market, right? Plus is the lateral moves, more than that. Just people moving up, moving down, moving around, changing their lifestyle around. That's paused. And here's my point. What's going to happen when it goes back, right? When the pause button gets turned into a play button, it's going to be really, really interesting because
It's going to be what happened when the pandemic got lifted and people could go out in the street and go out to the restaurants and go out to bars and go to theme parks and go to movie theaters. Hell, the movie theaters are posting bigger profits now than they did pre-pandemic.
It's crazy. It's crazy. But what's going to happen is the holdover, the pause guys are going to hit, everything's going to happen at the same time. And that's why you guys watching this one, we don't want you to get trapped in the herd mentality because it's not good, right? Be fearful when people are greedy, be greedy when people are fearful. The Warren Buffett famous statement, right? Right now, too many people are sitting back waiting. And what are they waiting for? They're waiting for 2 headlines. Number one, not rumors of upcoming headlines. They're waiting for the headline because they're more analytical and they want to have proof. They don't want to work on a hunch. They need the proof. And the headlines they're waiting for is the Federal Reserve met and they will cut rates at the next meeting, right? That's headline number one. They're not going to act on headline number one. They're going to start looking at headline number one. And then headline number 2 is going to say the Fed met again and anticipates multiple rate cuts over the next 6 meetings. That's the headline that people are going to go move on. But they're all going to move at the exact same time. They're going to put their houses on the market for their lateral moves, and then they're all going to become buyers, and they're all going to become sellers, and the real estate market's going to go spinning its head around going, what in the world's going on? There are now 80 homes on the market where there used to be 12, right? And I've got buyers all over the place. Rates are now low. And now you're going to have the investors, the big BlackRock still buying, plus Bob and Mary moving around. It's going to be nuts. So you need to ask yourself a question as a buyer. When's the right time to buy? And the right time to buy is not then. That's not the right time
Yeah,
Conventional wisdom.
they're going to take away the incentives because it's just like the builders did to us when we were selling houses so fast. They didn't pay our commissions. They lowered our commissions from 3% to 2% to 1%.
Yep.
Until they needed us. And then they took the commissions to 1% to 2% to 3% to 4% plus a $5,000 bonus. It's all supply and demand.
All supply and demand. Right now, we've got properties we got properties that are selling nightly or overnight with multiples in a high demand market, and we have other properties that are sitting with crickets that are really nice properties. There's just a slow market segment of that moment, and the only option is to wait, take it off the market until the frenzy comes back, or if you're in a situation where you need to sell right now, you need to suck it up. Right? You said Bitcoin earlier, right? Bitcoin's doing well right now. It wasn't. And if you needed to sell Bitcoin and you needed that cash back, it sucked that you had to sell when it was at 22, right? But if you needed the cash, you took your sale at the 22. Be great if you could hold out till it hits 100, right? But if you needed the cash at 22, you're out. You had to sell. So what we have now is life happening to people that have to sell. We've got a triplex that I think is worth more than the market's saying it's worth right now, because the market's coming in with an ROI cap rate on its mind and is hitting at about $500,000. I think it should be 100 grand higher than that. And it is in my mind, but it's not. For the last 5 offers have come in at that price instead, right? So the sellers have a decision to make: sit back, wait, hold out, take it off the market, chill, or suck it up, take it, lick your wounds, and move on, because that's what the market's telling you at this moment in time. But now let's become a buyer.
Well, I want to comment on that because I think, and I'm a broker and I've got a lot of agents, but I think this is a time where an agent's input is more valuable now than it ever has been before. And I'm going to give you 2 examples, one example at least. There's a neighborhood here in this market where we got really fortunate and some really nice older homes hit the market, and they had some really nice upgrades and really nice new everything and great views and all that. And they went 7 figures and above. Right now, this is a neighborhood that 3 years ago, those houses were the 400s. So literally they've doubled, right? So I saw a lot of agents come in and say, hey, look, these houses are going for 7 figures. That's over $1 million now. And they went listed houses that were not as nice, did not have the features, did not have the upgrades, were not as new, did not have the good location. And they tried to ride the 7-figure market. And that house sat there for 30, 60, 90 days. And the whole neighborhood started talking about, oh, the market's falling. Look, they have to lower their price. They have to lower the price. So, and I'm watching it happen in that market. One of our agents listed a house on Friday in that market. This house does not have a new roof. It's not on the cul-de-sac. The pool area needs to be upgraded. The carpets need to be replaced or done. It had its stuff. And our agent was able to communicate with the seller so they understood the competitive nature of the market. And we put the house on the market for, I want to say it was $860 on Friday. It had 4 showings, had an open house, had a full price offer on Sunday night. We had to cancel the caravan because the house sold. Now there's a bunch of other houses that sat on the market at the 7-figure mark that the agents weren't strong enough, or the seller wasn't open enough to listen to the agent, and they were marketing a house with a 40-year-old roof that's not going to pass insurance inspections, right? That's got a seawall that's going to need to be redone, and that's expensive, and that's just some little things like that, but they were holding on to that 7-figure number. So it took really strong agenting to get that seller to understand, and we've had the seller put on a new roof and upgrade the landscaping and do a couple little things. And guess what happened 7 days after it sat on the market for 120 days with no activity?
Sold.
It sold, and it sold over 7 figures. But that you either have to adjust the price down to meet the condition, or you have to raise the condition. And most of the agents that are newer to the industry don't have the skill to have those conversations, which is why we just had 2 conversation classes. We had classes on how to have conversations with the seller, how to have conversations with the buyer, because we know those conversations have to be had. And most companies aren't teaching those conversations. So it works.
And the conversations are different this month than they were 3 months ago.
100%.
And so
I want to say the point of my thing is the agent you're talking to is really important. and how they're trained and represented and supported is really important too. So
And
that's why I'm excited. Like you kicked off the meeting saying, bye bye. We don't need 1.5 million realtors for 4 million home sales in the United States.
There's a
We just don't
difference
need it.
between an agent and a salesperson.
Correct. And that's one of our topics on our sheet today.
That's, I mean, that's the reality of the situation.
I want to
And
hit.
if
I
you
want to hit.
have a quote unquote agent, you need to make sure you actually have a salesperson and not just somebody who's sitting there with a license.
Yeah, and salespeople can be abrasive because they're going to tell you things you don't want to hear, but you need to hear it. So
Before we
thank you, salesperson day.
Topic. Before we switch to that topic, I want to talk about buyers for a second.
Okay.
Because a lot of you are watching are buying or thinking about buying in the next year or so, or waiting to buy until the rates go down a little bit, which is perfectly fine, logical. I get it, right? But let's talk about what needs to happen right now, because you may think differently after this little conversation here. So we're having with some of the agents at the offices yesterday was same thing. The buyers want to. I always talk about giving the pulse. What are your buyers saying? What's going on? What's happening? What are you hearing? So buyers wanted to wait until the rates go down. So, okay, perfect. And then what did you say? Because they didn't think they could compete with the cash guys who are coming in right now. So they're going to wait till rates go down so they can afford more houses. But long story. So I said, okay, let's put on our hat, our agency representation hat, for a second. And you're the buyer. I'm the agent, and let's talk about what's going on. First and foremost, did you take them through the underwriting process from a lender perspective first? So if Mike is thinking about buying a house, the first thing I'm going to do with you as your agent is saying, before we even look at houses, Mike, you're going to talk to my friend Craig, who's the mortgage lender, and you guys are going to have a private conversation that I don't need to be privy to, and he's going to find out everything he needs to find out about you, and you're going to come out the end of that process approved and underwritten as a ready to be financed person with a commitment from a company that says, I've checked you out, I pulled your credit, I've seen your pay stubs, I checked your tax returns, I like you, you're good, we will loan you $875,000 guaranteed because of everything we said. Unless you go screw it up and buy a car or something, based on everything I know right now, 100% I will finance you. You're in.
Think about this. I want a rubber ink stamp on your forehead that says approved.
Yes.
So when you walk into the seller's house, they go, oh, we got a qualified buyer.
That's right. Because
how many buyers are walking around that are not qualified?
Because we're going to go in and we're going to take advantage of this next 3 months, right? This is what we have, guys. We have this little sliver of time right now, right, where you can get probably the best deals you're ever going to get buying a home right now, right? Because there are people that have to sell their home and have been on the market for a while with a lower amount of buyers out there that absolutely want to sell your home. So if I'm representing Mike as the buyer, not the seller, representing the buyer, and I don't have Mike come with that stamp on his forehead, Craig, then I'm a shitty agent, right? Because I'm doing a very poor job representing my client, because we're going to go in, the house has been on the market for 87 days. I've noticed 4 price reductions. I smell blood in the water, right? So I represent Mike, not the seller in this case, right? I'm going to represent Mike. I'm going to bring him in. And if he wants to lowball a little bit, I don't care, right? I'm going to do the comps and advise him, but we can go in strong because we're as if we're a cash buyer. There's no financing contingency. There's no question. If you're the seller, I would say, Mr. Beggins, there is no question. My buyer has the money. I don't even need a financing contingency. I'm going in, right? We're going to go in really strong. I'm going to do a really short inspection period. Why? Because I called my inspector and I know he has availability tomorrow and he can go do inspection for me and I'll have the report the same day. So I really need 3 days of my inspection period, not 7 or 10. I know how much cash Mike has. I'm going to say, Mike, I need you to put 25 grand in the title company right now. And I need you in 4 days from now to put another 25 grand down, be non-refundable, right? Ready to go. I've got your financing approved. I've got your inspection of the home has been done. You know, you want to buy it, where you can now go in a little stronger and, but we're real. Now the sellers may not like our offer, but it's the only one they have. It's the best one they have and it's real. Right? So let me go do my job. And then I can go in there and I can get you something that you normally won't be able to get before, because I'm strong as an agent and I'm guiding you on what to go do. Now, sellers might not like it, but I'm the only game in town for them right now. So if they are going through a divorce or going through something, I'm going to get my client the best offer because I'm a good agent.
And you've got another unique opportunity right now in that almost every seller has equity, lots of it.
Mhm.
So if they thought they were going to make 250 grand on their house, it's not the end of the world if they only make 200. So they're easier to come down because
Yep.
you're still making a killing, right? Especially if you get to the point where their taxes are more than 250 gain or 500 gain for a married couple, they're going to pay income taxes too. So you got a good agent on your side working again with you, and you got a seller with a ton of equity who's been on the market for 140 days. Something's not right. We say it in the office all the time. Craig, my house has been on the market for 120 days, but it's priced right. And I look at him and say, no, it's not. If it was priced right, it would not be on the market for 120 days.
Right.
Right. And price is not the only feature. It might need a new roof. It might need a new water heater. It might need a new air conditioning system, whatever it is, but it's not priced right. But now and just the sellers have a position they could sell cheaper and still make money and go to the bar and brag to their friends and say, I made $400,000 on this house.
Even if they gave a $25,000 concession to buy down rates, they still have a $400,000 price sale, right?
Exactly. That's my point.
So this is, now we're talking about being a good agent, right? And back to the point where agents are struggling because this business, prior to this type of a real estate market, we're not even a real estate market. We're in a unique niche market right now too, but one they've never seen before. Before, it was inbound order taking in a lot of cases. When everybody was buying houses at 2 and 3% free money, it wasn't hard to sell a house, right? But now it's very hard to sell a house. So it takes skill, it takes sales, it takes business mindset, it takes marketing, it takes strategic thinking to get a property sold the right way. And most people simply don't have the skill, and they don't have the time, nor the desire or the ability to go acquire the skill, so they're leaving, right? So, which is great, because you're getting rid of the cousin, sister's nephew who got the license because they had extra time driving Uber and they wanted to sell houses too, right? And they just got their, there's everybody. You guys all know, watching, probably 10 different agents. And internally, if you check yourself and say, should they really be an agent? You're going to laugh, right? Because they shouldn't. You also
It
know one or
shocks me
two good ones. What's
how
that?
many Uber drivers I drive with that are realtors.
Yeah.
It's funny.
So agents are dying, right? That real estate licensees are leaving.
Well,
But
make the other statement: salespeople are thriving.
salespeople are thriving. That's exactly what we're talking about. Because what we do as a company is we really bring sales into the real estate business, right? If you're our client, our seller, we're going to strategically position you the right way to get you sold. If you're a buyer, we're going to position you the right way to be a rock star when it's time to buy. When you're an agent, we're going to teach you how to sell and do both to both, right? Because we've had 32 years of doing this and a lot of success, right? So let's talk about what we're doing with the agents, our salespeople right now, because we're kicking agents out too, right? Those of who aren't committing to being really good salespeople and want to be good in this business, we're wishing them luck at the AT&T store, right? So that's fine. But what we're left with is several hundred really good people that actually have a business mind, right? They don't have to come from business, but they at the heart, would you say they have an entrepreneurial spirit?
I think they want to have an entrepreneurial spirit.
Yes. They can identify with an entrepreneurial spirit, but they might not necessarily know how to cultivate that and bring that out, right? So that's the desire and the ability to see it is first, right? And those who are there are able to, we're able to help and bring through. So let's talk about what you're seeing from what we're doing with the clarity, focus, action, and accountability. What are you seeing working with the agents that we're with? Because we are recruiting a ton of agents for us right now with us, and leading a lot of our growth. So what do you
Yeah.
see?
Well, I think there's a lot of agents looking around because there's a lot of agents that realize that there's likely going to be less transactions in total done over the next 12 months, which means they naturally are going to do less transactions than they did before. And so they're all trying to figure out how to still make the same or more money from less transactions. And that's going to involve different efforts, different actions. But the reality is, it all comes back to self awareness, and it all comes back to clarity of what they individually want. And I think the one thing that we do very well compared to most brokerages is it's not a boilerplate kind of template, right? I think a lot of brokers come in, agents come into their brokerage and they're like, this is how you make money in real estate. And the reality is, there's a lot of ways to make money in real estate, and they all work. They're just not all going to work for every agent. So, our job as their business partner is to actually sit down and say, you know what, Jeff, what do you want? What is it that you want? And then what does that cost, right? Because there's cost to everything. I don't care if you want to, if your dream is to be able to spend all day playing with puppies at your local pet store, cool. But you still got bills, right? You still have bills to pay then. So what does that cost you? And there's a financial cost to everything, no matter what you want to accomplish, whether it's buying something, spending more time, doing more charity, whatever. There's a cost to that lifestyle. And so we do a really good job of saying, all right, well, what does that cost? Now let's break that down. How many transactions do we need to actually be able to make the income required to cover that cost? And when we break all that down, now we can actually build a business plan with our agents that allows them to go achieve that goal. But it is a very specific, very personalized, because your ambition and what you want is going to be very different than Craig and very different than the next, and so on and so forth. So I think that's one thing that we try and do really well with our agents. But the ones that you can tell, our top agents, they're male, they're female, some are tall, some are short, some are skinny, some are not. They vary drastically, right? The only similarity, if you really dug deep, is that the ones that are at the top are super, super clear on what they are working for. That's it. They have complete clarity. And because of that, when you have clarity, it's very easy to get committed. And when you're committed, there's a very big difference between being committed and interested. There's so many things I'm interested in. There's only a handful of things that I'm actually committed to. And when you're committed to something, you're going to do absolutely anything, whatever it takes. When you're interested, you're going to do it when it's convenient to do it. And that's just the reality of it. And I think we do a really strong job of trying to decipher the difference.
And it's hard to do that. I'm looking over your left shoulder, Mike. There's a logo BE3. And B is for vegans, E is for enterprises, and 3 is the third power, E to the third power. And it's empower, educate, and encourage. And that's a super important part of the leadership of a company, because the people have so many different places they come from. If we hire somebody who was an executive at a large company used to making high income, they're generally going to migrate toward harder activities and making more income. If we hire somebody who started out maybe young and didn't have a whole lot of responsibility and didn't make a lot of money, they come here with the dream of making a lot of money, but they don't have the work ethic to do it, right? So a lot of our empower, educate, and encourage starts with this. And this is the class we did on Monday. I don't think there's any companies doing stuff like this, but here's a document. We call it a primary aim. And it says, hey, agent, real estate is not easy, right? You're not going to become rich overnight like most people think they will, because most real estate agents are really below the poverty level, and they don't even pay income taxes. They don't make enough money, and they get more write-offs than they do income. So we empower them to say, hey, look, let's look 5 years from now, what life you'd like to be living, and then get excited and dream and talk about taking limousines to the airport and flying first class and all the type of stuff that everybody wants to do. But what do you say, Jeff, all the time? You totally overestimate what you can achieve in the first year, and you drastically underachieve what you can accomplish in the long term, 5 years. Right? So we go through an exercise like that to get somebody started, then we bring them back to year 4, year 3, year 2, year 1, and get them excited for the long-term picture. And then they have to understand that there's activities that you have to do. And too many times over the last hot market, agents were hired without being told that there's activities that have to be done in order to reach the income. And the more income activities you do, the bigger your pipeline gets. The bigger your pipeline gets, the less you have to do more activities. But they skip that part. So that's why I think you're going to see so many agents fail, because they haven't learned to do the activities and they don't have the discipline. And they haven't been encouraged to have the big dream to do the daily activities, which are not comfortable. It's
And
not comfortable.
and they're going to fail because they didn't have the leadership to guide them through this process, right? Let me,
Exactly.
let me give you an example that what I did yesterday with some of the agents. So we were going through that form, primary aim form. Craig just showed you, and this is a great example. This is a newer agent, and with us, and he's mid-30s, got some big aspirations. So the challenge is it's tough to dream big when you have immediate issues and challenges, right?
Yeah. When your credit sucks and your credit cards are maxed and
And your
you're
car
renting a home, your rent just went up $400 a month.
and you got bills coming and you're not quite sure, it's hard to think about the limo ride to your trip to Hawaii, right? And so there's a massive disconnect in your brain, right? So we have to recognize that. We do recognize that there's seasons of your career in your life, right? So one of the agents is newer and big aspirations on it. So we were going through the big picture 5 years, and he had some struggles of getting to that imagery and that vision. And it turned out that he's got some pretty cool things. He wants to have a multi-generational home with his wife. He wants to have 2 more kids. He wants to have his parents living with him, and they got a 6-bedroom house. He kind of knows where he wants it to be. He knows the architectural style. Does not have the money to put this together at all right now, but the vision is there, the drive is there, and he knows what he likes to do with his kids, and he knows the vacations he'd like to do. He can't do any of them now, so we had to pull him out of the current reality mud that he's in, right? And think to the future about when that's not the case. What do you want, right? Where's that clarity? Where's that focus that will pull you out of the mud, right, and into where you want to actually be
It'll give you a reason to climb yourself out of the mud.
to make
Also,
right, to start stepping, right? So his example, I'll break it down simply. It was this house was going to cost him about $2.5 million, right? And so he's going to have $500,000 in cash to put down, and then he's going to finance a 200 million or $2 million home, and it's going to cost him about 25-30 grand a month to live. It's a lot of money, right? And then debt to income ratio, the guy's going to have to pull $1 million a year down to live this lifestyle. Is long story short and down. So it's like that's so far fetched, blowing his mind. $1 million a year, you're not making shit right now, right? So we had to walk him through. So 5 years from now, when he's 40, right, and he has $1 million a year, he's going to live this lifestyle. Still short circuiting brains, right? You're drunk monkeys. Your brains are going, what are you talking about? So what's realistic on year 4? If forget about how, right? This picture behind me all the time, the fuck how temple, right? That's my reminder all day long. This is not an exercise of how we're going to make $1 million a year. This is that we're going to make $1 million a year. And if we're going to make $1 million a year on year 5, 800 in year 4, right? And then one of our really senior agents, been with us for 17 years, I'm talking about, he chimed in and he said, here's what we need to discuss. And he and I had a nice discussion back and forth, because it takes nowhere near the amount of energy to scale as it does to launch, right? So you're going to bust your ass getting your first 50,000, your first 100, your first couple $100,000 in business and commission dollars. It's tough. Most people don't make it. They burn out, they leave, right? But what happens in this business is the exponential growth, because you sell Bob and Mary a house. Over the next 3 to 4 years, Bob and Mary get engaged and trained into their neighborhood, and they end up with friends, and their kids go to school, and they're in the PTA, and their sphere becomes big. And you did a good job for Bob and Mary, and they start telling their friends, and their friends start calling you. Then their friends start calling you, and then their friends start calling you. Before you know it, you have a lot of past clients. So the exponential factor of this business needs to be factored in. So we went from an $800,000 a year in year 4, 600 in 3 years from now, right? Still don't know how he's going to make 600 grand, right? 400 grand, and then 200 grand in the next year. That's still a huge number, right? But then we broke that down a little bit. So we work quarterly in our minds, right? And what we do with our agents. So that's $50,000 in a quarter in 3 months. Our average check is to an agent is over $10,000 by the time they sell a house, right? So per deal. So that's 5 transactions in a quarter. So watch how we're chunking this down. So there's 16 weeks coming up in the quarter. So could 5 transactions close in 16 weeks? That's one deal every 3 weeks. Right now, and then I'm looking around this room, and we got a bunch of agents in the room, and a lot of them they're doing transactions. Some are new, most are not, and they've all done transactions. They've done more than one transaction in 3 weeks in the past, so it's not a far-fetched idea. So then it goes to the agent and saying, Mark, all you have to do is find one person that goes and buys something or lists something and it sells every 3 weeks. Is that reasonable? Right? And now listen to what we're doing. One deal every 3 weeks equals the $2.5 million house, right? That's the point.
5 years from now.
5 years from now, by taking the steps and doing the things we need to go do. So then it really chunks down into that. So is that reasonable? All of you watching, right? You know the answer is yes. You can find a seller who's motivated, ready to sell, price it right, and have it sell. When you can find a buyer who you motivate properly, get them pre-approved, find the home and get them to buy it every week. We have agents doing that every week, multiple times a week, a lot of them. And now you go to the point where you could do it every 3 weeks, of course. So this process of going through the clarity, which turns into the focus, which now comes up with the business plan. And now he knows now it's about just taking action. And then we naturally are going to go, the next steps are he's picking what is going to actually do on that one. But I want you guys all watching. This is the time of year to get the business plan rolling. And this is what we need to do. If you're not in real estate, you're just watching this one, think about your income per transaction or whatever you do and do the same thing for yourself.
Well, I think it's very simply, it is creating a framework that allows you to be consistent. And I think that's the main reason most people are not consistent. I was just having this conversation last week with one of my teams that I coach, because I asked them, I said, hey, if I have two players, one hits 300 this month, one hits 240, who's the better player? And naturally, they think the kid who hit 300. I said, but the kid who hit 300, when we actually look back, had 2 or 3 bloop hits off the end of his bat. He had a slow roller down third, weak contact that happened to result in hits. The kid who hit 240 was putting himself in a better position, hitting line drives, hitting the ball extremely hard, just happened to hit it right at people. But if I extrapolate that out, who's putting themselves in a better position to have success over the course of the year? I promise you, the kid who's squaring the ball up, who's got proper form, who's taking really good at bats, who's hitting the ball harder, is going to have more success over the course of the year, because eventually those blue pits are going to stop. The slow rollers aren't going to work, right? That's going to lead to more strikeouts. So the point is, you got to put yourself in a position to succeed. And just because you got a result or a few results, you really got to step back and say, okay, well, what got me those results? Was it luck? Did I trip and fall into that deal? Right? Or is it because I'm taking consistent action and putting myself, and even though it hasn't worked out yet, or it's not working out to the rate that I want, if you're constantly putting yourself in a position to succeed, the success will come. But if you're just sitting there randomly doing deals, that's where this roller coaster business comes from that we see so frequently. And especially over the last few years, that's when you had a lot of people get into this business and they were tripping and falling into deals. They're like, oh, I'm a good agent. No, you're not. You got lucky. And there's a difference between skill and luck. Right. And I think but for me, everything in life is all about putting yourself in a position to succeed consistently. Doesn't mean you always will, but the better framework you can create for yourself, the more likely you are to succeed. And that's exactly what that exercise does. It creates the framework for you to succeed, because it does. It takes steps, right? I mean, a buddy the other day, we were talking about it, and he was looking at all these cars, talking to me about he wants to buy an exotic in his dream world, right? And I said, okay. I said, hey, you get $1 million tomorrow. What's the first thing you're going to do? And he sat there for a second. He goes, oh, well, I'd probably pay off this debt. I'm like, you just sat here building a lifestyle off buying a car, but when you got the money, what was the very first thing you said you'd do? Pay off debt. So the car can't be the focus then. The debt's got to be the focus, right? Because that's actually what we're working towards right now. So we've got to put ourselves in a position to potentially get, if the car is what you want, great. But what's stopping you? And it's not the fact that you can't afford the car, it's that you can't pay off your debt. So the debt has to be first, right? So now we got to put ourselves in a position to pay off the debt. So what's the debt cost? Okay, 50 grand. Okay, 50 grand. Great. What's our lifestyle? And that's where this plan that you just laid out, Jeff, is so important because it simplifies everything down. It's not easy, but it does simplify and creates a framework for you to be able to get there and succeed.
Well, here's the problem. Just the words framework, steps, consistency, it sucks. It's not fun. Nobody enjoys that. Nobody likes getting into that box, right? So that's why people don't do it, right? Yeah, right. But no, you don't. You appreciate the journey and where it's going, right? I know it's not fun everything that we do all day long, all the time. Sometimes it gets a little redundant, probably occasionally, right? But we do it. But why do we do it? Because we appreciate the framework and the steps and the consistency, not because they work, but because of what comes at the end of the day, right? And for us, it's the success. And for us, I know we're growing. One of the businesses we're growing is to have 21,000 amazing people that are really cool and fun. And the journey getting there is really a cool thing to do. But that's the vision that keeps us going the way that we're going. That lets the framework and the steps go through. But it's not just that. It's the things that you're able to do with your family along the way, for your family, the experiences along the way. You guys had a phenomenal trip to Hawaii, right? That wasn't cheap, right? That comes as a result of hard work and things. So we got to enjoy successes along the way and put those primary aims into place. So it's not glamorous. It's not sexy. It's not always fun. So if you don't have the clarity and the focus of the fun stuff, there's no reason to go to work. And that's where I think a lot of people don't get committed. Everybody wants the things they think they want. They really don't, right? So it's only when you find something that pulls you enough with enough power and energy to say, that's mine, I'm getting it, that's where I'm going, this is how it's happening, that will give you the reason to say, all right, let's roll the sleeves up, let's get to work, because that's on the other side of it. The other side of the fear, rejection, failure, crap, embarrassment, stuff around the way doesn't matter because that's more powerful of a goal.
That's it.
And then it goes, the last part of this is that's the reason to take your action, and then accountability. Like we use accountability form, which is phenomenal, which really breaks down, did you do what you need to do in order to live that lifestyle? And if you didn't, fix it, right? Short version of it. So that's what the agents here that work with us do to get things done on that point. So a lot to say today, but it's very relevant to buyers, to sellers, to agents, which is what we want to do with about real estate today. So hopefully,
I kind of think we want to change the image of a real estate agent as we get into this new normal market, because the image of a real estate agent needs to change. I hate to be tough on real estate agents. There's just too many bad ones, and I've got to deal with them as the broker. I don't like it. They don't deserve to be in real estate. They should have a real estate license, or they should get trained and become better agents. So I think the image of a better real estate agent is one who is a value provider. You know, we joke about a door opening monkey. If one of my agents ever walks into a house and says, "This is the kitchen," I want to shoot them. Because if you can kind of figure out if there's a sink and a dishwasher and a stove and an oven, it's the kitchen, right? And you should have known that, and they know it because they were on Zillow before they looked at you, right? And that's a whole nother topic for another day of discussion. You know, selecting houses online and all the crazy crap you're tricked into online marketing. And just you're dealing with door opening monkeys instead of a skillful agent, because the skillful agents aren't buying leads on Zillow. No, they might be on a team that's buying leads from Zillow, because I'm not saying Zillow agents are bad agents, because we got a bunch of Zillow agents that are dragon slayers, but they're not saying this is the kitchen and this is the primary bathroom.
Yeah, that's their lead source.
Yeah.
So
it's all good.
All right. Well, good. So I hope you guys got some good tidbits.
Boom, I like the Christmas lights on the bookcase in the back.
Thank you. Yes, very festive.
You're making me want to decorate my office. I should probably put some lights up or something. I'm going to put all green lights up for the Grinch.
All right, guys.